Thank you, Julie. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Committee of the Licensing Authority on Wednesday, the 11th of January, 2023. And it's 22:11. Could I ask for members if they're happy to agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of October, 2022, that can be found on pages 3 to 5 of the agenda pack. Agreed? All in favour? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. And Julie, as everybody is here and nobody's left the room, we don't have any further apologies, do we? Nor urgent business. I don't have any. Do you, Tina? No? And declarations of interest from anyone? There are none. And no non-members wishing to address the meeting. So we'll move on to item 6, the quarterly team update. And I hope that this is going to be from Josie Hoban, the Senior Licensing Officer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Josie.
Thank you. So I'd like to provide you with the usual quarterly update on what the team has been up to. So we'll start with the Licensing Act. I've broken it down into the different areas. I just thought that would make it a bit easier to understand. So following intel received from the public, a visit was carried out to a premises in Attleborough by the police and myself. Illegal sized vapes were found and a few minor infringements regarding display of license, etc. On that visit. Information and body cam footage was passed to Norfolk Trading Standards, who visited the premises shortly after, I think it was about a week, and seized a very large quantity of illegal vapes. So we're just awaiting further information on whether a review of that premises will be forthcoming from Trading Standards and the police. An update on the Safety Advisory Group. I updated you last time to say that the wash-up sessions from the 2 big festivals would be taking place in November. That got postponed. They will now be taking place in the next 2 weeks. All Safety Advisory Group partners have been invited to attend, and the meetings will be attended by the event organisers. So it's to review what happened last year and hopefully for them to tell us whether they intend to go ahead with their events this year. In regard to the number of applications that we've received, we've had 2 new applications for new premises licenses. They're currently going through the consultation phase and come to the end this Thursday. One of those has received representations from the police and Trading Standards, so we'll be going to a panel hearing. With regard to temporary event notices, which I reported on last quarter, we now have the year-end figures because temporary event notices go from January to December each year. So January to December last year, we had a total of 334 temporary event notices issued. The year previous was 184. 2020 was 81, not surprisingly, given we were in COVID. 2019 was 240. And given that that was a normal year, you can see that we had a massive increase in this last year. So I'd just like to say well done to the team because it does add quite a lot of work to their regular work. Animal welfare, as Marion has already mentioned, following all the work on a recent inspection by the animal welfare officer, the zoo themselves, with all the work they put into it, and the official inspectors, the Banham Zoo updated licence was issued by formal presentation by Helen Crane, our exec member, and Marion Chapman-Allen. I believe it went quite well, and there were some photos taken with the giraffes. Giraffe enclosure, is that right? I didn't manage to get hold of one, unfortunately.
No, I was going to say the ones that were printed, I think, were the ones by the seal.
Oh, okay.
And it was absolutely freezing cold, but the giraffe enclosure was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I think it was a bit dark for the photographs to come out particularly well.
I did ask Cons for some photos to put up, but unfortunately they haven't come through yet.
It was quite amusing because I said to the Chief Executive Officer, very, very interesting person, we were upstairs on the top floor of the giraffe house, and I said, are these young giraffes? And they said, no, they are adult. I think one was 24 and another 26. And I said, well, they do look small. And when we went down to the bottom floor and I looked up at the height of these giraffes, I realized that they weren't baby giraffes at all. They were enormous. Yes, it was wonderful.
That's good. Some other work that Alan has been working on is that a variation has been served on one of our license holders. It's something that we can do when we have concerns. We've received a couple of complaints about a person running a homeboarding and daycare on their site. They were licensed, so Alan and myself went out and did a re-inspection and were quite concerned at some of the things that we found. So we did a variation to their license, reducing the number of animals that they can currently have. They have rectified a lot of the matters that were brought up during the inspection. And what I would say is they can apply to be re-inspected. Once they pay a fee of £185, they will then be re-inspected to make sure that they meet those requirements if they wish to have their numbers reinstated or increased further than what we have got. But if they don't meet those standards when we go out and do the re-inspection, then numbers will remain the same. They did try and appeal the decision to do the variation, but it was upheld by the senior officer within the council because it was felt that they couldn't argue against the decision that was made. They weren't able to substantiate that actually all of the things that we had put in that inspection report weren't actually factual. So it was upheld. We've also received complaints about dog breeder, and Alan carried out an unannounced visit, which resulted in the license holder agreeing that they were no longer able to meet the minimum standards to be licensed. They have agreed to rehome most of the dogs and surrendered the license, just keeping those that they consider to be pets. They did decide on reflection that they no longer wish to breed and have surrendered the license. So it's a positive result from that one. And then another piece of work that Al's been doing, he's been a busy boy, is he organised and chaired the third meeting of the Norfolk, although it's actually East Anglia because we've got people creeping in from all over, Animal Welfare Officers Forum, which was started by Breckland Council. The leader of the council opened the meeting, giving an address on the importance of animal welfare and the work undertaken by local authorities in this area. We had a representative from the Kennel Club, it's a brave man, came and gave a presentation and answered many questions from the group. We also had two representatives from a group called Street Vets, which I hadn't come across before. They gave a presentation on the invaluable work their project carries out, and there are different projects all over the country. It started in London and is working its way out to all of the cities across the country. It's a project where vets and assistants give their time free of charge to go into the city and offer the homeless with pets a free service to check their dogs over, or cats or any other pets they may have with them. They give free flea and worming and any other medications free of charge. They are supported by vet practices, so if any of those animals need to go and be seen by a vet during the day to potentially have biopsies taken or operations, etc., they have work with vet practices, and that's done again free of charge. And they offer not only medications but food, coats, leads, blankets, etc. for those animals. So I think it was really interesting having them come, because I hadn't heard of their project before. So that's it as far as I was concerned at the moment. Moving on to taxis, there was a licensing hearing panel held on the 19th of October for a driver who did not meet the current convictions policy. The panel refused to grant the license as there was no reason to go against that current convictions policy. We've also interviewed two drivers recently for separate reasons, not related. The first driver received a verbal warning on behaviour as it was clear that it was out of character. The second driver received a written warning and 3 Breckland penalty points. If they get 9 in a 3-year period, we bring them before the committee. There's still no update or any information forthcoming from the Department for Transport on the new guidance on vehicle specification. We've been waiting on. The website still says we are analysing your feedback, check back later. Not sure when later, I keep checking. I will continue to keep checking. With regard to scrap metal, because it's our 3-year renewal period at the moment, licensing officers have been visiting scrap metal sites as the renewal applications have been coming in, and there have been 5 site visits carried out so far. The assistant licensing officer has been checking records for scrap metal collectors. So there's the two separate areas. You've got the sites and then the individual collectors who go around and collect scrap in your area. She's been checking their records to ensure compliance with the legislation. So that's where they have to check the identification of the person they're picking the metal up from. Writing down what it is they've collected, what date they've collected it on, whether they've paid any money for it, etc. And then that gets put with, when they take it to the weigh station and actually cash it in themselves, it gets put with that. And that there's a record that no cash has been paid, because the whole point of the 2013 legislation was to stop cash payments for scrap metal, to try and eliminate that area where unscrupulous people were taking drain covers and things like that in. So everything is now recorded as to regards to what kind of metal it is, where it's come from, who it was sourced by, etc. So it's we just have to check all of those records and make sure they're keeping them correctly. So that's a good piece of work that's taking place, and we've done about 16 of those collectors so far as well. So we've got a few more still to do that are in the pipeline. So yeah, that's going to keep them busy for a little bit longer. And then I have, if it's okay, Madam Chairman, a couple of legislative changes I'd like to update the committee on. The revised guidance under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003 has been issued by the Home Office. That's guidance that's for local authorities, for local authority officers, and just kind of specifies a bit more detail about what we should be looking at when we're looking at applications under the Licensing Act. So there's been changes to the right to work entitlement changes since the 1st of July 2021, where EEA citizens and their family members are now required to show immigration status to provide evidence of their right to work in the UK. They've just basically written in some changes that have come from some other legislation. So with the temporary event notices for last year and this year, the numbers increased. So it's now 20 temporary event notices per premises. There are a maximum of 26 days, where it was 21 days previously. The number of people at the event remains the same at 499, and the minimum periods between the 10s of 24 hours between one notice and another remain the same. There's also clarification on what variation applications should be used for. And it's made it clearer because it said it should not be used for substantial changes to a premises. So in future, if there are substantial changes to a premises, then we would be looking for a new premises license application. Conditions from the applicants. So that's when a person makes an application for a premises license, they fill out a section called Section M, which is their operating schedule. It would be things like them offering up that they have a refusals log, or they're going to operate a Challenge 25 policy. The Home Office has said that what the applicants offer up should be interpreted in accordance with the applicant's intention and should be appropriate and proportionate for the promotion of the licensing objectives, because there were some local authorities who were literally just copying them verbatim from what the applicant had written. I'm glad to say we don't do that, so we're okay with that one. The next update, just very quickly, is on the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill 2022. It is just a bill at the moment. I'm not sure when it's going to go through. The consultation started on the 22nd of December and goes until the 2nd of March. There are currently 196 sections and 17 schedules, so it's a big document. One of the main areas affecting licensing are proposed changes to make pavement licensing a permanent function. So if you remember, pavement licenses came in under during COVID to enable businesses to get a pavement license faster. There are going to be some slight tweaks or proposed tweaks in that it won't be a week, it will be 14-day application period, and they are intending to increase the maximum fee that local authorities can charge for that license, because at the moment it's not cost recovery. The maximum fee we could charge was £100 and it was set at 75 and remains at that at the moment. There's also a proposal that we could be allowed to grant it for a maximum of a 2-year period rather than an annual license. We may be also given power to seize furniture where no license exists. Watch this space. Further change from this bill to the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act 2014 is to amend it so that a PSPO area will not relate to any area benefiting from a pavement license. So that means where there's a restriction put on it for street drinking, where you wouldn't allow it, if a pub has a pavement license, that PSPO area wouldn't affect that pavement license. They would still be able to serve the alcohol outside and drink it at that premises on those tables on the pavement. Because currently there's a conflict for the police because it's not clear in legislation. So they could go around swiping people's pints as they're sat on a table currently. I don't think they do, but they could if they wanted to. And they have just 2 items of interest that I think may be of interest to you. There's a document currently called Martin's Law, which is to do with the protect duty. It's in tribute to Martin Hett, who was killed alongside 21 others in the Manchester Arena terrorist attack in 2017. There's no date as yet, but the intention is to improve public security. It will place a requirement on those responsible for certain locations to consider the threat from terrorism and implement appropriate and proportionate mitigation measures. It's likely to include premises where qualifying activities take place, including entertainment and leisure facilities, retail, food and drink, museums, galleries, sports grounds, local and central government buildings, visitor attractions, temporary events, places of worship, health and education, etc. Further information on Martin's Law, if you're interested, can be found on the government website. And then something that came out of the Institute of Licensing regional meeting that I went to in December was the CAN card initiative. I don't know if anybody's heard of that. It's to do with cannabis. So CAN card is a medical ID card that provides verification for the police and third parties that a person is taking cannabis for medical reasons. That's in inhaler form, not smoking. The card is only available from specialist GPs or CAN card's medical team. So far, they have refused 95% of applications as they were not medically required. It's just a case of watch this space to see out if it's rolled out nationally. So it's just something I thought you might be interested to hear about. Also, the Local Government Association is working on a white paper regarding the licensing of shisha bars, as these are currently unregulated and highly profitable. There is evidence that the nicotine in shisha pipes damages the body to the same extent as tobacco products. The proposal at the current stage is to add this to the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1982. So again, one for us to watch. And then just lastly, what we've got coming up, Madam Chairman. So we are still going to look at the authorised garages for the taxi trade. You'll be pleased to hear. We're still at 3 at the moment. We would like to get that back to at least 5. We are going to have to do some work with the procurement team on that, but I will bring that to you as and when we're ready to go forward with it. Work continues on development of the web forms and online payments. We're now moving to the next stage of integration of web applications into our back office system, so that there'll be less keying involved going forward, fingers crossed. And then it's hoped that in the next 3 to 6 months, we can review all of the web pages in line with the changes and also with accessibility requirements. I'll be pleased to know I haven't got anything else to say. Thank you, Madam
No,
Chairman.
Josie, that was all very interesting indeed. And I'm quite sure we could have all done with a written report on it, Josie. But members, I'd just like to add something on to when Josie mentioned about the 3rd animal welfare meeting, which was hosted here at Elizabeth House. This is for council officers, licensing officers. It's for them to get together to discuss best practice, etc., etc. It doesn't involve us as members. But I would like to say, as Josie mentioned about the Kennel Club attending, that was a real feather in Alan's cap to get the Kennel Club to come to address. We had all the councils in Norfolk and we had some from Suffolk as well. We had a huge veterinary practice in Norwich, the RSPCA. And as Josie said, it was so interesting when these street vets, which I'd never heard of, although I've done some research since, the 2 of them gave their report. It was so interesting, the work that they do, and to think that they volunteer to do it, to go out in the cities and things like that. And I asked at the end, what could the council do to help? And the vet said that when homeless people were swept up, for want of a better word, on the streets, they had to give up their dogs, which was their best friend, you know, their companions, their life. And so it would be really helpful if councils could accommodate the dogs. And I was really happy to be able to say that Breckland Council already do that with our hostel in Thetford for homeless people. We actually take the dog as well. And so I thought that was a really positive bit of news. Do you have anything you want to add, Tina?
No, only that I'm really pleased to see that you're going to be looking at the garages for the taxis. Again, that's something that, you know, we desperately need to spread that out. And there's so many garages out there now, and I think I've pointed a few your way that are again baying for the opportunity to do it. So I'm pleased to see that. Thank you, and well done. That was a very good report.
Members, do you have any questions? That's Mark.
Madam Chairman, thank you. A question about temporary event notices. I note the large increase. Do you think, I mean, as a comment on my part really, do you think that is because licensed premises are giving up the ghost because of their increased costs? Therefore, the drinking public are migrating to the village hall on a Friday night with a temporary event notice? And is it going to continue?
Okay, I can say that currently we haven't seen a downward turn in the number of pubs. I think that's a watch this space at the moment. I think this next quarter is going to be the telling time for most public houses, given the current, you know, way we are in society with all the inflationary costs and everything. So I think it's a watch this space. I think some of it we had, I think 35-ish that were to do with the Jubilee. So obviously there was a small increase from it for the Jubilee. But I think people have just been wanting to get together more. And I think villages and towns have run more events. I think there's just been more events taking place. And obviously we've also seen an increase of weddings, private weddings taking place where they get a temporary event notice because they have a pay bar. So we have seen a slight increase on those. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens this next year from January to December. I'm hoping we don't see a downward turn in the public houses. I think that would be detrimental to most of the villages. I think it's not good when we lose the village pubs. But
Could you turn your microphone on?
I couldn't get it on, sorry. And I did learn in my county division another pub closed this week in a large village which got nothing else other than a pub and a shop. And so hopefully, I presume people will start using the village hall again for that, and that would require temporary event notices too.
What I would say is that you as councillors in your parishes and districts may well know more about what's happening on the ground than we do, because we wouldn't hear about that closure until they surrender the licence, potentially. What I can say is we give as much help as we can to any of those groups that are trying to organise their, in inverted commas, pop-up bars in their local parish halls, etc. We do try and give as much assistance to them as we can. So
I thought, Josie, when I inquired before Christmas, that we'd only actually had one pub surrender their licence last year. I
haven't got those facts and figures with me today. I know I commented at the last report that we'd had more surrenders, but they were surrenders we were expecting. So they were premises that had been closed even pre-COVID, that we've done a bit more work on chasing up and trying to get the surrenders from people, because it neatens our paperwork and our system up. If we're not, every time we send out an annual fee letter, even if it's suspended, we have to make sure that we're sending it. So if we can get them to surrender the license if they're no longer using it, then it's less time and resource spent on doing something we don't need to be doing when we know that it's shut, but we're just having to do it for administration reasons. So we try to do a little bit more of that this year, which is why we've got more surrenders. But yeah, I think you're right. There haven't been many closures, but as I say, it's a watch this space. I think the message to get out there is use it or lose it at the moment. If you can afford to go to your local pub and
Mm.
enjoy being there, then please go and use it, because we don't want to see them all disappearing.
And members, I did notice before Christmas, and it is par for the course, strangely enough, with publicans. Although I was always very prompt on paying my license when I was a publican, but there were an awful lot of suspensions for public houses who had forgotten to pay their license, which I always find rather strange. They do get a reminder letter, but it's not until they get to the letter to say that you've been suspended, and suddenly the checkbook comes out and everything is back to normal. So as Josie said, yes, I think it's very important that, you know, we use them or lose them. Anyway, Josie, thank you very much. Philip.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to ask about the scrap metal licenses. You checked a lot in this last quarter. Did you find many irregularities?
I can say that in general, most of the sites are running really, really well. We had one where they did admit that they were still giving a few cash payments, so they have been advised that they cannot do that. But in the main, yes, still very well run. Most of our sites have been running for some quite considerable time prior to even the 2013 legislation coming in. So they've been doing it a long time. They know what they're doing. We have had 2 surrenders on the scrap metal sites where they're just no longer feasible for them, and they've closed the businesses down. But we have seen 3 new ones come on, so it stays at a pretty even keel, to be fair. But yeah, in the main, everybody is doing what they should be doing, especially when it comes to the record keeping. There've been some difficulties with them getting their basic disclosures from DBS. I will just put that out there. So whether it's a postal issue or whether it's a DBS issue, we haven't quite gotten to the bottom of yet, but obviously we're working with those sites to make sure that we can get their licenses reissued as quickly as possible once they get those DBSs in. But that's really been my only serious concern is whether or not we've got the DBS from them.
Well, if it's anything like the delays that people have been suffering from with the DVLA in Swansea, I have sympathy with them. It seems a great shame when so many businesses have been managing to run very successfully on home working, part-time home working, etc., and yet the really big important places such as the DVLA, where the DBS comes from, don't seem to be able to quite cut the mustard sometimes. Right, Josie, thank you very much. Sorry? Oh, Taylor, you've been so quiet.
Yeah, it's not a question, it was just a comment, just to thank Josie and the team again for how quickly they tried to resolve the issues that we had in Attleborough and the site visit that they conducted, because the turnaround on obviously the report being made to the visit was really impressive.
Thank you, Taylor. And thank you, Josie.
Can I just give one piece of advice that you may want to all pass on to anybody who contacts you with those kind of concerns about a premises either serving underage or whether there's illicit, they believe there's illicit tobacco. So by all means, contact the licensing team and let us know. But if they could also put it through on Crime Stoppers, and if it's any kind of underage sales, if they could let Norfolk Trading Standards know, there is actually a section on the webpage at Norfolk County Council where you can just report it. So it's quite an easy thing to do. But by the police and trading standards getting that intel, once they receive enough intel, they will then go out and do a visit. So it's really important. I mean, we can do some things if it's a licensed premises, but obviously the police and trading standards when it comes to illicit tobacco, illegal tobacco as well, we don't have any remit under that. So it's really important that people know that actually that Crime Stoppers is really useful. It does go through to the police, as 1 or 2 of our cases recently have identified. So if you can pass that on to anybody that contacts you as councillors with those types of concerns, by all means let us know, but ask them to let Crime Stoppers and the TS know as well.
That's very interesting, Josie, because I've always said that as councillors, we are the eyes and ears for the officers. I've had a lot of feedback on some challenges in Thetford in the last year from a member, and without their feedback to me, we wouldn't have been able to take any steps to solve this problem. And with Taylor, once again, contacting me and the team, it was excellent way of doing things. Thank you very much, Taylor, and thank you, Josie. Members, any more questions? Right, we come on to item 7, which is training requirements, if any. Do any members have any training requirements that they want us to consider? No, Tina, no? And feedback and discussion on recent panel meetings. I don't think we've had any since the last meeting, Josie, have we?
It was just that one driver that I did mention in my report.
Yeah. So there's no further feedback on that. We move on to the next meeting. To note the arrangements for the next meeting to be held on Wednesday, the 22nd of March at 10 o'clock here in the Anglia Room. So this meeting is now closed. Thank you for attending, and thank you to those who've been watching on live streaming.